Welcome to the desk. My name is Cora, and I'm joined this weekend by Nathan, That's Admirable Zamora. We have got some awesome quarterfinal matches for you guys coming up today, but first off, it is going to be dude7597 versus topopablo. Dude, a native from Seattle, Washington, and Pablo, of course, the first Chilean representative we've had here at the HCT Championships. Admirable, you've been saying, time and time again that Latin America's time to shine is now. How do you feel about Pablo's chances?
Well, I did pick him to win this entire event, and TJ happened to pick Dude to win the entire event. So big stakes in this one. But as far as this event is concerned, I wasn't entirely sold on it. I did feel that the play has been stepped up, but after talking with topopablo over the weekend, he has a fantastic mind for the game. While I don't think he's the strongest technical player here, I do think that his plan that he developed is incredibly strong for this one. And as far as I'm concerned, I think having a strong plan is better than having strong technical skills.
Absolutely, and let's talk about those bans real quick. We actually just saw that Pablo banned out Dude's Hunter deck, and Dude banned Pablo's Dragon Warrior. The Warrior makes sense because Dude is bringing Freeze Mage. What do you make of that Hunter ban?
I feel like the Hunter ban is really spot on for here. I mean, I think topopablo anticipates his Warrior being banned in the situation since Dude has brought Freeze Mage. And if you look at Hunter, it's going to line up pretty darn well versus Druid and versus his Tempo Mage. And in the Hunter mirror match, I think Dude even has an edge due to a couple of tech choices that were in there. So I think this ban, while it certainly looks non-standard, it's actually pretty smart considering the lineups.
Absolutely. We're going to see how that Hunter ban works out for Pablo, but first we've got the Mage Mirror. This is, however, Tempo Mage for Pablo and Freeze Mage for Dude. Now, in the prelims, Pablo actually beat Pasqua with the Tempo Mage versus the Freeze Mage deck, so do you think that he's going to be able to do that again, or do you think Dude's Freeze Mage might be just a little bit too strong?
Well, normally, I'm going to say that Freeze Mage has a bit of an advantage in this matchup, and topopablo having a copy of Flame Strike in here, I think, is a little bit of a detriment. But if you take a look at the way the hands are structured right now, topopablo has one of those incredibly strong starts. He's got double Mana Worm, he's got the coin, he's got Cult Sorcerer, and he's got Fireball. What he's looking to do in this matchup is basically get minions on the board and have them stick. If those minions get to deal repetitive damage, that means that Dude doesn't have burn spells. He's spending time digging through his deck. If that's the kind of time that topopablo gets, he can deliver massive damage and have a final blow with those burn spells to finish off the game.
Absolutely, and if the Freeze Mage can get that strong start, get their cycle, Novice Engineers, Loot Hoarders, Arcane Intellects are also very strong in this matchup, then the Freeze Mage can certainly keep up with the Tempo Mage and sort of push back the aggression. But for Dude, his hand is a little bit slow. We do see a copy of both Secrets in hand and none of that cycle. But, we actually did have a chance to play a little bit with both Dude and Pablo yesterday, and Dude's Freeze Mage skill is very, very high. So do you think that this hand is going to be that much of a problem, or how do you think that this might play out for him?
Well, initially it was looking pretty rough. I mean, Ice Barrier I think is a pretty key card to this matchup, just being able to extend the minion pressure, which isn't a ton of minion pressure, so Ice Barrier is a very effective tool there. But he picked up Frostbolt, and then he picked up Forgotten Torch, which are two of the main tools you're looking for in this matchup. They're going to kill almost all of topopablo's minions in terms of a 1-for-1 card. And that's a big deal, because if Dude can find time, that's exactly what he's looking for. If he gets to the late game, he has the massive advantage.
As the Freeze Mage, you normally want to be able to bring all that burn into your hand, group it up, reduce it with Emperor Thaurissan, and then you want to use that burn to kill your opponent very quickly. But in this case, Dude has been using that burn to clear off Pablo's minions. What do you think his win plan is going to be in that case?
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's just kind of extend the game here. I mean, the fact that if he can kill minions piece by piece and get to that late stage, it's almost insurmountable for topopablo at that point, unless he just has a ton of burn. And what he's picked up lately isn't really a ton of burn. And we saw him draw Flame Strike super early. There's one copy of that in his build. Arcane Blast is just pretty poor against this deck. The situation's going to work okay, but that's a second Arcane Blast now. I mean, he's looking to get something on board and have it stick. And if that's not happening, it means he wants to draw his draw spells, like Arcane Intellect. Those are such important tools to this. Now, Dude's hand isn't super fantastic at this point, but who does it benefit when both players have bad hands? The slower deck or the quicker deck, Cora?
I would go with the quicker deck. But you know what? It's tough to say. The control deck plays for the long game. The quick deck... Actually, I'm going to change my answer. It's the control deck, because the quick deck, if they don't have the good hand, has a very tough time of amassing their pieces, and then the control deck is the one that wants to play to the long game.
Right. Like the control decks, they're okay with passing turns at times. They don't have to do anything. And that's the beauty of playing control decks is that sometimes your best turn is just to say go.
Yeah. But in this case, you know, Pablo had that strong start, and the Tempo Mage doesn't have a lot of minion stability in the mid game. It does have the Azure Drakes. Pablo's playing one copy of that Kabbalist Tome. But other than some really nice early game, if you don't curve out well from there, if the early game doesn't give you that board pressure that you need, you don't have a lot of minions to really draw into. So we're seeing that right now from Pablo. He's having a tough time drawing into more board pressure, whereas Dude, like you said, is able to sort of just react, and that's going to put him in a more, you know, favorable position going on.
And that's an important note you hit too. I mean, Azure Drakes and Kabbalist Tome, and of course Yogg-Saron, that's basically the reload from this deck. Now, I know anytime you talk to Sottle, he'll tell you exactly how much he loves Kabbalist Tome. He thinks it's a fantastic tool that mages can use to reload hands with very consistent spells. But is that going to be enough versus Dude in this matchup? I mean, he's already got Alexstrasza, he's got an Ice Barrier down, he's at 27, and he's got 2 copies of Ice Block. Topo Pablo cannot take advantage of the fact right now that Dude's hand is weak, and that is the liability for him.
That Kabbalist Tome could potentially be a game changer if it were to give Pablo something like an Ice Block. And at the end of the day, it gives you spells. It gives you fodder for that Yogg-Saron, which we see in Pablo's hand. So anything can happen when you have enough spells. Yogg-Saron is, of course, a game changer. So Dude is struggling a little bit for some cycle. Going to go ahead and play that Thalnos and trying, once again, just to repopulate his hand.
That's a significant draw here for Topo Pablo. Something that was really interesting to note is that Topo Pablo didn't choose to Forgotten Torch last turn. You know, in this matchup, you basically, once you've been stifled on your early game, you just want to draw burn spells. And so that Forgotten Torch not only is going to help fuel the Yogg-Saron that's coming later on, but it's also going to help put an additional burn spell in his deck to draw. I mean, 6 damage is nothing to scoff at in these kinds of situations. And Babbling Book ends up picking up Kona Cold, a tool that's not very useful in this matchup. And if he does not draw some minion pressure or draw some massive burn, it's going to start getting ugly.
Yeah, the later the game goes on, the more that the game just swings into Dude's favor. We see the Alexstrasza in hand, which could be used as a defensive Alexstrasza to boost himself back up to 15 health, but he's at 26 health right now. That's not looking like it's going to be necessary at all for him.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive Alexstrasza in this matchup is really the potential you unlock when you get to such a safe spot like this. You know, he's already used 2 of his Frostbolts, so unlocking the potential of Ice Lances, it's much more difficult. It's looking like it actually may be coupled with that Frost Nova this game, but being able to deliver 8 points of damage with Alex or pull 8 points of damage, from Topo Pablo's side, that's just more extension. It's offense and defense at the same time when you get to that spot.
Absolutely, and Pablo has a large hand, but nothing too impactful right now. He's really looking for a Flame Waker to be able to combine with those cards that might not be as effective in this matchup. The Mirror Image, the Cone of Cold, really not doing much at all. There aren't a lot of minions coming out from the Freeze Mage, so he really just wants to get the Flame Waker, combine with those pretty much useless spells, and try to put some pressure on Dude.
Now, something that's interesting to note is you saw Topo Pablo there kind of counting in his head and calculating something. When I spoke with him about sort of his playstyle and how he likes to play, he loves to take risks when the time calls for it. In this situation, though, he's really kind of putting his heart on his sleeve there. Like, if Dude's paying attention to that, he knows he's counting something. And if Dude's very keen and knows this matchup, what is he counting? He's got to be counting damage at that point. So that's a really interesting thing to note is the fact that both players can see each other, and he's still having that sort of physical aspect that way.
Dude finally picks up some of that really important cycle. He gets the Arcane Intellect and picks up the Roaring Torch and the Acolyte of Pain. That was a really nice series of draws for him. He needs to consistently refuel his hand. We haven't seen Emperor Thaurissan to provide any discounts, but that's almost okay because his hand right now isn't full of that burn that he wants to see. He does have the Fireball, the Roaring Torch, the Ice Lance, which will be really nice if you combine it with the Frostbolt. But for now, those reductions aren't super necessary, so he just wants to keep picking up more and more cycle and really digging deeper and deeper into his deck.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really like outstanding about Dude's deck. It's pretty much like a stock Freeze Mage list that you would imagine. And so once he's gotten to this point, again at 25 with an Ice Barrier up and with an Ice Block, it's gonna be so hard for Topo Pablo to launch an assault this game. You know, I'm thinking something crazy from Yogg-Saron is gonna have to happen if Topo Pablo wants a real chance in this one. I mean, it may be even something extreme as needing to get Flare off the Yogg-Saron to break through this, because right now the ball is in Dude's court.
Absolutely, and you know, that is certainly possible for Pablo, and he does still have a couple of ways to deal damage in his deck. Like I said, he's got the Flame Wakers, second Forgotten Torch, which will put, you know, 2 additional Roaring Torches in his deck. Those act as fireballs, but are 1 mana cheaper, so that's kind of nice. He does have some tools, but it's just looking pretty difficult for him.
I should have definitely made an Ultimate Frisbee reference there.
Ooh,
I totally missed
opportunities.
It. I know.
Darn it.
Dude is a very avid Ultimate Frisbee player. Actually competed at Nationals one year.
Yeah, I think he won state with his high school team, and now competed at Nationals last year with his collegiate team. We're actually going to be seeing some really interesting interviews with him about his Ultimate Frisbee playing.
Here comes the damage at this point, and rightfully so. I mean, Topo Pablo's got to get underway. I'm curious here if he actually decides to attack with the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I mean, he knows that one of these secrets is Ice Barrier at the moment. Is he going to be able to deliver 5 additional damage worth of minion attacks this game? I mean, dude has expended almost none of his AoE spells. He's actually expended none of his AoE spells at this point, and that's exactly what Topo Pablo's thinking about right here when he foregoes the attacks. Don't proc that armor, and that Alexstrasza right there, that is spelling disaster for Topo Pablo right now. He's got to believe that dude potentially has the damage in hand to end this.
And fortunately for him, it's close. Dude has the Roaring Torch plus Fireball, that's 12. The Ping would give him 13, but the Ice Lands cannot be combined with anything thus far. He does, however, have 3 potential cycle cards in hand. He has the Arcane Intellect and the Novice Engineer, which can refill, so he's most likely going to find that damage. So Pablo has to do something right now, sort of a Hail Mary, to try and turn this game in his favor.
Yeah, I mean, he looks at the situation, and he might even be thinking that this is such an extreme situation he needs to Yogg-Saron. Now, if he doesn't choose to do that this turn, Yogg-Saron is certainly slated for the turn after. If that's the case, he's going to try to stall the Alexstrasza attack, build a few more spells, and hope that Yogg-Saron can pull some big weight.
And it's certainly possible. You could pull up something like an Ice Block for yourself, Flare. But
and here's the thing about it too. This is actually a bit of a detriment here. You know, that button being green on the end turn, that's a good thing for Topo Pablo right now. It means he doesn't have any more decisions to make right now. But when you wait this long to cast Yogg-Saron, those animations take a lot of time. And so if something had happened here, he wouldn't quite know where he was at in this situation.
yeah, you definitely want to try and make those decisions as quickly as you can, because if you were to have, you know, charge minions played on board, if you were to have a weapon attached to your hero, you want to be able to get all of the value out of your Yogg-Saron that you can. Sap on the Alexstrasza, it's not terrible, and
it's not the one you
that's
want.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, so it didn't work out quite for Topo Pablo this time. Again, I think he needed something extreme. Like, I think Yogg-Saron quite literally might have needed to cast Flare in this situation. Dude just has a massive lead. He's got Ice Block. The Alexstrasza got sapped back to his hand, so now it's also a defensive tool, although it has been dealt with. And he's got a second Ice Block in hand as well. It's almost impossible for Topo Pablo to win, even with the Yogg-Saron. Now without it, he's praying for Kabbalist Tome potentially into 3 Ice Blocks if he's going to win this game.
It is looking unlikely. Dude, however, is 1 damage off lethal, so Pablo gets 1 more turn. Yeah. And
that's
can he do anything?
Yeah, not enough at this point. If he casts Arcane Intellect, even if he drew Kabbalist Tome in this situation, he would not have the mana left over to cast any defensive spells that are significant in this spot. So it's a matter of time at this point, and that's going to do it. Dude's going to wrap up game number 1 with a shaky start, but a couple of fantastic pickups to answer those early minions. That's first blood.
Absolutely, and really just showing the strength of the Freeze Mage pick in Conquest. I mean, we've been saying that not a lot of Freeze Mage. Tempo Mage is certainly very strong right now as well, but the players that put in so much time into the Freeze Mage and who really know it well.
First game is so super important in this one because Dude's first deck happened to be Freeze Mage in this. I feel like that's actually one of the weaker spots in his lineup when you compare it against Topo Pablo's. And picking it up against Tempo Mage, you know, that's one where I think he's often going to find a win there. But the bigger story there was just kind of showing you the confidence of Dude in playing the matchup. You know, we saw him hard mulligan for specific tools, didn't quite pick them up, but pitching away tools that are okay in order to try to find tools that are great is what gave him that win. Topo just fizzled out a little bit towards the middle and wasn't able to keep the pressure up.
Yeah, but we are going to see that Tempo Mage once again on Pablo's side, and then Dude will be playing his Druid deck. And the Tempo Mage actually performs pretty well against the Druid traditionally, if it gets a nice strong start. But no mana worms here, so how do you think Dude's going to be able to sort of swing this match into his favor?
Well, this is going to be an interesting turn here, because I know that one of the things that pretty much every single deck in the format struggles with is a turn 1 Fandral. Turn 1 Fandral unlocks a ton of potential, and it makes the range of cards in your hand so much scarier. Dude's going to choose to be a little bit patient here with it, so he's going to approach this matchup from a very different angle than I think you'd see from a lot of players here. You know, he had the opportunity to go Fandral into Raven Idol and pick up a little bit of extra value. Fighting in this Mage matchup is very much a matchup of value at times, so I'm curious to see exactly where he goes with this. But topopablo's hand is starting to develop very nicely. He's got both copies of the 3/2s in his deck, the discount spells of Sorcerer's Apprentice, the extra spell damage of Cult Sorcerer, and Mana Worm is such a key draw. Even if it's not on turn 1, the fact that it's a 1-mana card that can provide so much damage is super important.
Absolutely, and Dude chose not to innervate out the Fandral on 1. Instead, also on 2, is going to be going for the Mire Keeper. Do you think maybe he just wants to save it for the later game and try to get even more value off of it?
I'm curious if the Mire Keeper changes game plan at all. You know, a lot of times innervating Mire Keeper is so strong because it gives you that additional ramp and it gives you a body on board. You're kind of double dipping on this particular card. So if Dude had not drawn that Mire Keeper, I'm curious if that would have prompted the Fandral from him instead. And not going for Fandral this turn, I think, is really smart as well. Topopablo going into that 3-minute turn with Sorcerer's Apprentice means he's got access to Fireball. He's got access to a couple of cheap spells if he wanted to play them. Maybe even like a Flame Waker turn that could really swing things here. But you know, the fact that Dude is understanding every single card he draws affecting his game plan is really speaking a lot for how he is as a player. It's a pleasure to watch him play. And topopablo, he's kind of got his work cut out for him here. He's having to just throw stuff on the board. And at this point, I'm curious if there's any option for him other than to try to protect the Mana Worm with this Sorcerer's Apprentice.
No, I think trading here would definitely be the play, and he does decide to trade the Apprentice into the Mire Keeper. But yeah, I really appreciate Dude's patience in this matchup. I feel like a lot of the time we would just be tempted to innervate coin Fandral, and then you end up getting the Raven Idol next turn, and comboing anything with Fandral just feels really good. You want to be able to get that value. So the fact that he recognized that he's playing for the longer game, he is going to be you know, wanting to value that Fandral even higher in the later game, and instead went for the Mire Keeper. So that, I think, is just really very evident of the skill level that Dude is as a player. Yeah,
I really like that he's pacing himself. You know, it's very important in this matchup. Again, it's oftentimes a resource battle. You know, you take a look at Dude's Druid list specifically. He's got 2 copies of Power of the Wild in here alongside the Violet Teachers. He's got 2 copies of Ancient of War. He doesn't have that Malagos build that we've been seeing played a lot lately. And here's where he's going to start to unlock some of this potential value. Fandral here, it's already gotten the job done, I'd say. It's very likely to pull a burn spell if topopablo happens to have one here, but it's reloading fast. He's already got the ramp moving, and just wonderful options from the Raven Idol as well. I think Dude has got a lot of gas in the tank to fight this game, but topopablo's hand is still looking pretty good. I think a lot of this is going to boil down to that Kabbalist Tome.
And you know what? That Kabbalist Tome is going to be doing exactly what you want it to do. You want it to provide you some refill, and hopefully you get something that is useful in this matchup. Another Fireball would be fantastic. Even against Druids, something like a Flame Lance or a Polymorph are really, really effective in this matchup. So that Kabbalist Tome potentially holding quite a bit of value. And Pablo is able to just go ahead and Fireball the Fandral, get it off the board. But now it's Dude's job to sort of react once again. You can't leave this Mana Worm and this Cult Sorcerer alone.
Certainly not. I mean, it looked like it's slated for Mana Raptor and Wrath. And I want to talk about topopablo's hand here for a minute. You kind of hit the nail on the head. Hopefully, he picks up something off Kabbalist Tome. That's the thing about that card. It's very high risk, very high reward. And a lot of times, the risk is so great because when you're spending 5 mana and you're not affecting the board state in a deck that's basically dedicated to keeping the board state effective, you know, this is his one real tech choice that I feel like could be a major liability to him.
I mean, unless you're so far ahead on board that you essentially have a free turn to just play the Tome and still remain in that proactive position, the fact that it doesn't affect the board can be really detrimental. So going to be interesting to see, you know, does Dude choose to sort of clear off this board and make the Tome turn a little bit more awkward for Pablo? And it looks like that is what he's going to do.
Yeah, unless topopablo does something super strong here, I imagine it's got to be Kabbalist Tome. I mean, this is probably one of the strongest turns you're going to have for it. And now he's just drawn Sorcerer's Apprentice, so you know, the potential to unlock cheaper spells with it as well. He doesn't really have a way to take advantage of this board state at the moment, so he's got to find a way to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, there are certainly some less than stellar options from the tome. Shatter comes to mind. Some of the secrets, effigy, second Kabbalah's tome, is a little slow. So there's definitely things that you certainly don't want to see from the tome, but you do have 3 cards, so more than likely you're going to get something that you can use in some way.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the Freeze Mage matchup here too. You know, topopablo doesn't have all the time in the world. He's the one who's typically the aggressor in this matchup. Dude, once he gets that late game, he's scaled so much that he can turn the corner very quickly, be it with Violet Teacher combos, be it with just like powerful endgame spells with Ancient of War and Emperor Thorson and Nourish to reload, you know, be it with Arcane Giants. The world is his oyster once it gets to that late game position. And topopablo, when you take all that into consideration, that's what he's deciding right now. Is he goes, you know what? I'm just not going to win a long game right now. I'm going to have to draw burn spells off this Kabbalah's Tome. I better get these 3/2s developed and try to push some damage. If dude doesn't have a removal spell here, I'm likely to get through 6.
That's actually very well thought out by Pablo. The tome doesn't affect the board state, so even though he only added an additional 6 power to the board, and one of those minions is definitely going to be removed by this mounted raptor, the potential for 6 damage to face on the following turn, and then getting a little lucky off the tome, get a couple fireballs, maybe a pyroblast. He recognized that that is his way to win the game.
Now, I'm a little bit curious about this attack from Dude. I mean, Sorcerer's Apprentice, I think, is by far the superior minion in this deck. You know, the fact that topopablo, right now, it's looking like he's going to need card draw to be able to get back into this game. You know, Dude just had a relatively weak turn, so that spell damage could be scaring him a little bit here. But this is topopablo's turn to try to take advantage of something. And he goes for the Arcane Intellect here to try to dig to like an Arcane Blast or something like that. And now he's got 3 more opportunities at it with this Kabbalah's Tome. If he manages to pick up some spells that he could cast from this turn, he could easily snowball this game.
Yeah, trading into the Cult Sorcerer instead of the Sorcerer's Apprentice, I think.
Cost him a lot this turn. There's that Shatter, but he drew a Frost Nova with it. And Frost Nova Shatter is a great way to answer Ancient of War in this matchup. The problem is topopablo's, since he just had a relatively weak turn as well, it's mostly just reload. If Dude can take advantage of that board state, that's where topopablo could be in trouble, and I think he is.
Oh man, and Pablo had such a fantastic turn. He was able to use the Sorcerer's Apprentice to discount both the Tome and the Arcane Intellect, whereas if Dude had cleared off that Sorcerer's Apprentice, he would have only been able to play one of them. But unfortunately, the 3 cards from the Tome are a little bit weak this time, very reactive. And the second Arcane Intellect is nice. He's going to need to dig a little bit more, but in this case, he doesn't have anything too impactful in his hand. Yeah,
at this point, it's looking like he's on the burn plan. I mean, Dude's hand cannot take advantage of this board state very well. It's basically the board fighting the board in this situation. What can he add behind it? And that's the kind of turn that topopablo is hoping that Dude has in a situation like this, one where he doesn't have a massive board swing taking place. Like, picture a swipe here, for instance. It would have wiped out these 2 minions, it would have pushed 6 damage from minions, it would have dealt 5 to his face. He'd have been in a bad board state, and now instead, it's in a reasonable condition. And so in this situation, if topopablo finds a lot of burn, he can win this game. If he doesn't find burn, he's in a lot of trouble.
He unfortunately doesn't have any in hand, but he does have plenty of ways to find that burn. He's got the Drake, the Arcane Intellect for cycle, and then that Babbling Book is a card that people have been pretty, you know, hit or miss on. They either love the Babbling Book or they're not a fan of it. You of course are saying that you like the Babbling Book. I also enjoy the Babbling Book. I think it's nice to have something to play on one.
That's actually
shattered.
Well, it's actually like pretty solid in this situation simply because the Kabbalah's Tome has given him a Frost Nova. If he could get to a safe board state, he can just kill 2 of the high priority threats from Dude. I mean, if you look at his list, 2 Ancients of War and 2 Arcane Giants are the top end right now. Of course, there's Yogg-Saron, there's Emperor Thorson. Violet Teachers need to be dealt with. The Violet Teacher's getting dealt with right now. topopablo's at 30, and he's got Frost Nova and 2 Shatters to directly answer any threat that Dude can play right now.
That's fantastic. Oh my goodness. I don't think we've ever seen Shatter be quite as effective in competitive play than it is right now. The potential is fantastic. And Dude is going to play down that Arcane Giant.
Now my question here is topopablo going to eat some of this damage, or is he going to go for that Shatter right now? If he saves that Frost Nova Shatter, he's going to be able to potentially kill a second Arcane Giant.
The thing is, if he decides to go for it now, that second Shatter becomes useless, unless he were to get that second Babbling Book or Frostbolt.
Again, he wants to be using damage on face, though. He doesn't want to invest it into minions right now.
It looks like he does definitely have the option of taking 12 damage to the face. It would put him down to 14, which isn't terrible. He's definitely, not in risk of dying unless you consider that dude does have Yogg-Saron in hand. If he recognizes that maybe Pablo does have the burn in hand necessary to kill him, then potentially dude would... Wow.
It's an interesting draw, to say the least. I mean, I imagine that Hero Power is slated this turn on the Drake, but does he want to preemptively Arcane Blast that Arcane Giant? You know, if he does it right now, that 8 damage could very likely go to face. If he doesn't do it right now, dude has a chance to trade, and with that second Azure Drake, maybe he can then set up a kill on it. So this is a really interesting spot here from topopablo, where patience is what he selected.
It looks like dude can just swipe the Drake and play down that second Arcane Giant.
Oh my gosh, this
Frost
is exactly what topopablo wanted.
Double Shatter, oh my goodness.
This is crazy. I've never seen this happen.
This is so cool. I love it when we get to see cards that are, not usually playable.
Look at dude's reaction.
Oh my goodness. Oh. The second one. That is heartbreaking.
I mean, this just went from dude having the game completely won to all of a sudden looking like Yogg-Saron might be his real win condition here. And Mulch is drawn. Dude's got 2 copies of Mulch in his build. He's got no copies of Feral Rage.
Yeah.
The life he's playing with, and that's it. And Power of the Wild gets drawn. He's going to try to reload this board. This is right into Flame Strike. topopablo has destroyed dude's pressure now.
Oh my goodness. Pablo could take advantage of that Flame Strike. He also has the option, if he wants to get that Drake down, Arcane Blast would clear off that Azure Drake very easily, and then Forgotten Torch, Frostbolt. Oh my goodness. Pablo is just assembling all the pieces he needs.
The damage is very much there now. It's a very realistic possibility. Arcane Intellect and Flame Strike will clear out the board and continue to dig. He's got Azure Drake plus a couple of burn spells that he could use to handle the next threat that's played. I mean, if dude doesn't draw anything significant next turn, there's a chance he plays Yogg-Saron. And that's not the position he wants to be in right now. When the board is clear, it's not a very favorable Yogg-Saron. And topopablo looks like he wants to get this Drake on board. He has seen a swipe at this point. So this will also enable the Arcane Blast on that Azure Drake immediately. Save that Flame Strike for a little bit later.
Yeah, it's very rare that you see a Yogg-Saron when you are ahead on board. You don't want to offensively Yogg-Saron. Usually it's a defensive play or something to close out the game, especially since oh my goodness, Pablo just going 4 damage right to the face with that Forgotten Torch, and that puts the Roaring Torch into his deck.
And think about what that says to dude at this point. Your opponent has a 3-2 on board. You have a 4-4 Azure Drake. They're at 16. You're at 16. They deal 4 damage to your face. Dude has got to be terrified of topopablo's range right now. If it's just fireballs, the game could end.
We did see the first fireball on the Fandral.
Here we go. Well, that's. I mean, it wasn't good in Priest. It's not good in Druid.
The Innervate, though, is not bad, actually. That's a decent draw.
No, it's not what he needed. Silvermoon Portal doesn't want to buff that Drake. It buffs the Drake.
Oh, no.
Living Roots making 1/1s. This is right into Flame Strike, too. Now, it does extend a little bit outside of Flame Strike. Thistle Tea. Oh, my. If dude manages to get through this turn, it's significant. My question is, does he get through this turn?
If he only had 1 more mana right now, Mulch on that Drake would be fantastic, but he just did not get the clears that he needed from that Yogg, and that Hunter Secret, though, could potentially make some of a difference.
He picks up a Mulch from the Raven Idol. That's so huge right now to be able to deal with the Azure Drake. This means that topopablo is going to be committed to dealing with this board presence, and then suddenly saving that Flame Strike looks like it's so strong for him right now.
Yeah, Innervate Raven Idol into the second Innervate to be able to play the Mulch gave him that 1 extra mana that he needed, and now dude has a phenomenal board presence. Oh my goodness, I did that yesterday too, didn't I? Oh man, now this is just turning into a habit. That's dangerous.
Yeah. So dude very much happy to see a commit of damage to the board, but very unhappy to see the Flame Strike afterwards. And in this situation, I'm actually curious if we're going to see dude uproot an Ancient of War here. I mean, he has to deliver a final blow, and he has to do it now. That Hunter Secret he has up is Bear Trap. It's not providing him any sort of real defense at the moment. And again, he's got to be scared that topopablo has enough damage in hand. I think we're seeing an uproot here.
Oh my goodness, that would force out the Fireball or the Roaring Torch onto the 10-5 Ancient of War.
And he's happy to see. I don't think it necessarily does force it.
Oh,
and
yes.
And that's the thing, is dude would be happy to see burn on this Ancient of War right now. He's got two
That's
more
what
in
you
his
want.
hand.
Oh my god, Thistletea. What a card, am I right? This is not bad.
And that's an Arcane Missile's not the damage he's looking for right now. It's unreliable at best.
I will not be trifled with.
All right, Naga Sea Witch. The Fireball costs 5, but that's fine. He wasn't likely going to play the missiles anyway. We haven't seen a single Flame Waker for Pablo.
Here's the thing. This is a mistake from topopablo, and here's why. That Thistletea that got cast, he could track the cards in hand and see where that Ancient of War came from. He would know that dude has 2 more copies of Ancient of War in hand right now. That Naga Sea Witch is dead to a second of Ancient of War right now.
Yeah.
Now, dude can just play defense. He's seen a Fireball, so he can feel safe a little bit. There's no way that 5 damage is getting through.
But what other option did Pablo really have there? He could have just tried to cycle. And,
yeah, I think you dig for the win here. He's got a copy of Roaring Torch in his deck. He still has another Forgotten Torch alongside a Frostbolt. I mean, he could have realistically found the damage here. And with a 10-5 Ancient of War, it means that Flame Waker can actually deliver some damage here as well.
Yeah, and in this case, the Naga Sea Witch is essentially useless. It's like you're putting nothing on the board because you're not going to be able to clear the Ancient of War with it. You're not going to be able to hit face. So the cycle would have
really
likely just been better.
That dude doesn't feel comfortable just playing another Ancient of War here. I mean, he's seen all the Kabbalah's Tome cards. He knows that there's not a Polymorph inside of topopablo's deck. The only way he could get a Polymorph effect right now is the second Babbling Book into the catalog spell. Makes a second Uproot Ancient of War. And topopablo, that Flame Waker draw is hot like fire.
That Flame Waker
and that
right
mirror
on
image
time.
is so good.
And there's that Frostbolt. Okay, so he does have some more burn left in the deck. He has to clear off this Ancient of War, though, so the mirror image...
It's isolating it.
And the missiles... oh, my goodness.
I think this is another Arcane Intellect here. Now, it depends if he wants to clear the Ancient of War or not. I mean, something that could realistically kill him here is a Spell Power into Swipe, but I believe he's seen both Azure Drakes at this point. And he will just select to clear, and that's going to mean Frostbolt to the dome.
Oh my goodness.
2 more points of damage. topopablo is closing in on the win here.
How does...
It's no help.
All right, so you play your Ancient of War, 5/10 taunt, you hero power, you're at 5 health, and Pablo needs either some direct burn or several spells to be able to hit face. Oh my goodness.
Second Flame Waker, Arcane Intellect. I mean, even without the second Flame Waker, topopablo is massively favored once he gets to this spot.
And I was just saying we hadn't seen those Flame Wakers, but coming in right in handy. And Roaring Torch, Forgotten Torch, Pablo has an embarrassment of riches to be able to finish out this game. And topopablo is going to tie up this series 1-1, taking out dude's Druid deck. That was a fantastic match, really just swinging from both sides very quickly. The game changed several times. But, I mean, Pablo was not always in a fortunate position. How do you think it really ended up coming down?
I mean, that Kabbalah's Tome and 2 Shatters alongside the Frost Nova is really what made a big difference there. You know, being able to deliver a finishing blow on 2 Arcane Giants in one single turn, that's never what Druid's looking for. So now it's going to be Dude on his aggressive Shaman build versus topopablo. And looking at Dude's Shaman a little bit more close, looking at topopablo's Druid a little bit more closely here, it's very, very similar to what we saw from Dude's list. The major difference being that there's 1 copy of Mulch and 1 copy of Feral Rage rather than 2 copies of Mulch in here. So that does benefit him, I think, slightly in this matchup. But overall, he's at a pretty significant disadvantage. This is very much an uphill battle for him.
You know what? Both players actually have reasonably nice hands. Pablo had the Living Roots on 1. He's got the Wild Growth, plenty of ramp. But Dude's hand is just... it's fantastic right now. He has both the Tunnel Trog and the Argent Squire, 2 3-drops, some removal. Really just a fantastic hand for the aggro Shaman. So Pablo, like you said, going to have a very uphill battle in this case.
Yeah, the Ancients of War really do make a big difference in this matchup. And that's really the one thing to point out. Is a lot of the Malygos versions tend to struggle with Shaman because they don't really have a stabilizing tool. I mean, they're reliant on Yogg-Saron. This one's got 2 copies of Ancient of War, and we're seeing the early ramp into it. Violet Teacher is a threat that Shaman oftentimes does have to pay some attention to. But Dude's opener with with the Tunnel Trog here, and now the options at his disposal, this is where topopablo can really struggle. He doesn't have the early removal spells that handle this board, and so Ancient of War, rather than being a stabilizing tool, might actually end up acting as a removal tool instead, and that's not the situation that topopablo wants to be in.
Absolutely. The Druid has a fair amount of removal on their own. They've got, obviously Swipe, Wrath. We only see one copy of Mulch in Pablo's deck, whereas Dude has two, but that Feral Rage can also be used for some early removal on something like the Totem Golem or the Tunnel Trog. So the fact that he doesn't have any of that in hand is, putting him at a disadvantage. Tunnel Trog, coin Feral Spirits.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough spot for topopablo early on, and Dude, he's debating over the trade here. If he chooses to trade, it kind of cuts into topopablo's ability to actually answer this board state, and it also strengthens you a little bit when you see something like Violet Teacher and you feel you may actually want to answer this right away. So does have the option to answer it, and it would have meant he got a little bit of extra value at the Tunnel Trog if he chooses to use the Tunnel Trog here. But the other thing it does is it takes away topopablo's ability to, say, do something like a second Wild Growth and use Hero Power, or a Wrath and use Hero Power, trade in both of those saplings. Restricting topopablo's options means that he's going to have a tougher time handling the board.
Do you want to overload this turn? You don't have the Flame Wreath Faceless in hand, but potentially you could draw it on the following turn. And overloading this turn gives you a stronger board state now, but it does restrict your options for the following turn. So do you think that's really a big deal, or would you have liked to see something else played this turn?
I think I like where Dude's headed with this right now. I mean, again, it's just his 3-cost cards are so strong at the moment. Feral Spirit, I think, is one of the stronger cards versus Druid in general, unless it turns into like a minion-on-minion style fight. But Tusker Totemic is just great in the same regard. He has the high roll potential there. If he finds one of those 3 important totems, it's a big deal. But it's really all on topopablo's shoulders right now. I mean, the Ancient of War is looking like it's falling into a bad state when you look at the board position, because it's going to be matching up pretty darn well versus an Ancient of War, and this is a 1-mana card. It's already done massive work, and it could potentially do even more.
And, okay, so Doomhammer comes
added
into hand. That makes this turn a little bit more difficult because while the Feral Spirits would put significant board presence and boost that Tunnel Trog up to 6 attack, it does restrict his options for next turn. So he could go with the Tuskar Totemic. Which one do you like better here?
Well, all the ramp has certainly got to be making Dude consider what's going on here. I think I'd like to see the Tusker Totemic into the Doomhammer. I mean, Feral Spirits is basically always going to be good. Tusker Totemic might not always be good, but he's favoring the extra damage here that he's getting from this Feral Spirits as well. So kind of playing both angles of the attack at this point, and we'll see if it's going to end up working out. I mean, topopablo, like I said, he wants to use Ancient War as a stabilizing tool, not a removal tool. It's good enough, but he's staring down a 6-power Tunnel Trog. If there's a Flame Tongue Totem on the other side of the board, if there's a big Overload spell, that's where topopablo could be in trouble. But he's already seen both Feral Spirits. He knows that he's overloaded for 2, so he can't Flame Wreath Faceless. I mean, at this point, it's basically Lava Burst or it's Flame Tongue Totem. And we've seen topopablo, when he can't play around cards, he hasn't even tried to at this point. And that's something I really like about his gameplay is he's understanding where he's at in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And he did have the option of playing the Violet Teacher, could have wrathed the Tunnel Trog and gotten it off the board, but that would have not affected the board state as well as he wants to at this point. He needs to prevent damage, and he needs to remove this board in some way, shape, or form. So the best option for him would be if Dude were to have to trade off the Tunnel Trog and 2 of the Feral Spirit Wolves. But we'll see.
Oh my gosh, that is huge.
Oh my goodness. All right, well, that is exactly what Dude needed to be able to save some of his board and push even more damage.
7-mana card eaten by half of a 3-mana card and a 1-mana card. Not the situation you want to find yourself in. Now, a second Wrath gets picked up. Is there a turnaround potential here? I mean, Dude's hand is super strong right now, but this is about to be a massive push onto the board.
It's definitely possible, especially because that Feral Rage doesn't just have to be 4 attack on your hero, it could also be 8 health. So that could potentially be the stabilizer that he needs. I think this turn you just want to go ahead and remove as much as possible from the board, but if Dude next turn were to have Doomhammer Rockbiter, it would be all over.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I don't think topopablo can really play around that. I think if he sees Doomhammer Rockbiter, he's out of this game. He doesn't have another taunt in hand. Even if he gains 8 life right now, he's going to be taking 17 damage from that swing right now from 21. He'll go to 4 facing a Doomhammer. I don't think that Feral Rage is slated this turn. I think he's got to try to cut into the damage and hope he doesn't see that that big endgame push that Dude is looking for, because the Shaman endgame comes much earlier than the other decks endgames typically do.
So he's trying to decide, does he want to Feral Rage defensively, or does he want to presumably Wrath away the Tuskar Totemic because it does represent the most damage.
Yep. I like wrapping it off here and hoping that you don't see the top end from Dude. I think this is his best chance to win.
Oh, man. And is Dude even afraid of this Violet Teacher at this point, or does he just...
Not anymore.
No, he's not.
He may see a trade on a couple of the 1/1s here to try to restrict board options, but that would be, I think, the most that he's willing to commit at this point. I mean, he still may Lava Burst here. I mean, the Doomhammer is going to be good on the next turn as well. And if he goes Tunnel Trog here, he gets the Lava Burst and play 2 other things. So he does have that option, but I think here the damage push is just too strong to ignore.
Wow, so Dude is going to be able to deal 8 damage to Pablo's face. He can Feral Rage on the following turn, but that Lava Burst is just representing too much.
Ooh, Swipe.
Does the Swipe do it? It definitely helps.
I mean, Swipe cuts all the damage off the board, and then he goes to 13 from the Feral Rage, and then he goes to 14 from the Hero Power here. And Dude has got 9 damage showing with Lava Burst and Doomhammer, up to 11 with Finley into Steady Shot. This is where topopablo can try to make a push here. It has to be now. He's going to have to draw a defensive tool, but it's a possibility.
Let's see, following this, what can he do? He does have Raven Idol, so that could potentially give him something like Healing Touch.
He's at the mercy of his draws.
It's very tough, but he does have the potential to come back into this game. Dude is looking at a 2-turn lethal right now, potentially.
And that's if nothing gets picked up.
Yes.
And Thing from Below is a great pickup when there's no cards in the opposing hand and they only have 5 power out. I mean, here you could realistically see a single trade onto a minion to be able to force through that Thing from Below and make sure it sticks unless topopablo picks up something or unless he's willing to take 5 damage to finish off that Thing from Below. Everything is spelling Dude this game.
Yeah, Pablo just, you know, was looking like he had the potential, but
I was trying to think of a dead draw that
Dude could have even had.
Like Abusive Sergeant, maybe. You know, another Argent Squire. Everything else in the deck is pretty darn good at this point. You know,
Lightning Storm would have been nice.
Flame Tongue Totem. Lightning Storm, it would handle the board pressure too. I mean, just everything is coming up Dude this game. I mean, he doesn't have really a bad draw in the deck.
And you know what? That's what the aggro shaman wants to. It wants to position itself well, especially in a matchup against the druid. If they don't get that early removal, then the aggro shaman, it just doesn't have a lot of dead draws in the late game. When you need a couple points of damage, you're very likely to get it.
Now,
all right, I want to see Tree of Life.
So, fortunately, it's not in the format anymore. Starfire's good here. Nourish, it's okay. It's his best option. It's okay, I think. He's got to find something to dig here. I'm thinking Starfire, Moonglade Portal were probably 2 of the better options he could have picked up at this point, but. These next 3 draws, these will likely decide whether or not topopablo is losing this game or if he's extending it a little bit. Swipe will extend it. An Arcane Giant. Thank you, Arcane Giant, for being our Yogg-Saron spell counter. You can see that Arcane Giant discounted from 12 to 2. Each spell discounts it, so that is a 10-spell Yogg potential here. 4, 9, once again, 11 damage available from Dude, unless he got like Life Tap into something else. And outside of that, topopablo is almost committed to playing Yogg-Saron on the following turn. He's been seeing Dude hold cards in his hand the entire game. You know, he's got to anticipate that this is in the neighborhood of Argent Horse Rider, of another Lightning Bolt. You know, what else could those cards beat? Maybe a Lightning Storm even. topopablo, I think, from his perspective, has got to believe that's damage available in Dude's hand.
Oh, wow, and Dude actually chose to go for the Totem before playing the Finley.
Fine Shapeshift. Is that enough to close it?
That's 6 and then 5 with the Lava Burst.
It's 11 total this this turn, and this will mean Yogg-Saron for topopablo unless,
my goodness.
Unless it's just an insane pickup, which he doesn't have any of the deck right now that are that insane. So it's almost certainly a Yogg-Saron turn. My question is, should he play Yogg-Saron prior to attacking and try to get damage buffs on his minions to maybe deliver a final blow?
It's always so tough to tell. I mean, you could get something like Savage Roar, Bloodlust, anything can happen to buff your board and attempt to just kill your opponent that turn.
Everything is awesome. That's the one. I was trying to remember the name.
Everything is awesome.
I mean, it's got to be Yogg. There's no question it has to be Yogg. He even gets an Innervate prior to it, so it's Hero
Giant,
Power.
Innervate Yogg, Hero Power, Innervate Yogg.
Yeah, I think that's the play here.
Oh my goodness. So we're looking at an 11 spell Yogg-Saron. What do you think? Do you choose to hit face? Do you trade minions, or do you decide to save and go for that lethal push?
Look, at this point, I'm surprised that we're even in this game. If I'm topopablo, I'm going for the lethal here. I'm going to buff my minions and hope that I can deliver that final blow. I think it's the correct call.
Oh, man. Well, hopefully for Pablo, the first card isn't Twisting Nether. But we'll see.
I wouldn't mind seeing some attacks in the form on these minions, but I think clearing off the tunnel trot here was a little bit risky. We'll see where this game ends up going. So no attacks available for Topopablo, no decisions left to make. Let's see where this pans out. Polymorph Boar, so that Boar is dead in some capacity. An Ice Block, Cat Trick, Hellfire. So board is cleared. Topopablo's at 4. He can no longer heal, though, because of Embrace the Shadows. Sets himself to 1 with Quick Shot, and Healing Touch will not heal him. It will kill.
Oh, my goodness.
Second Yoggster on the hand. Gang up in the deck.
He is not dead. And now he has the Ice Block, so dude cannot kill him this turn. He's going to pop the block, and that might set up Pablo for a second Yogg-Saron next turn.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe.
This is insane.
This is happening right now.
But here's the thing, dude. Because Cat Trick is played on Pablo's side. So if dude plays one of his spells, then Pablo puts 11 damage on board. Hero Power is 12. If dude plays either of these spells, even with the Hero Power, he's just dead.
Well, here's the thing. So he pops the Ice Block. He can kill Yogg-Saron with the Lava Burst, which I definitely think is slated this turn. Topopablo then has 4 damage on board, 5 with the Hero Power. That's if Yogg-Saron gets killed this turn. If he doesn't kill Yogg-Saron, it's 7 damage instead. So then he's dead to a Swipe Draw.
Yes.
He's dead to some of the Raven Idol spells that can be drawn here. He's already seen Feral Rage, but if he's not considering Feral Rage, he may think that he's dead to that. You know, if Topopablo, if he draws into a Living Roots and I'm trying to think of another damage spell that would actually kill this point.
The thing is, he's got to be so hesitant to give up his direct damage because of the potential of something like an Ancient of War draw from Pablo.
That's a big point. That's a very big point to make.
But he has to Lava Burst the Yogg-Saron if he wants to live. Otherwise, well,
Cat Trick's not proccing if he doesn't cast a spell.
Yes, Cat Trick doesn't proc if he draws a spell, but and Pablo's played both swipes already. So second Raven Idol could do it.
Lava Burst, and there's the 4 damage. And here, I would love to see Topopablo, if he's going to play Yogg-Saron, which unless he draws something lights out, he has to do. That is definitely another Yogg-Saron.
Oh my goodness, he is at 1 health.
Oh my gosh, you got to go for it. And this is it.
It's
11 spell Yogg-Saron.
He can still attack.
Bloodlust gets cast. That's so 4 damage off. I'm sorry, 5 damage off lethal. Wind Fury.
Goodness.
Is that onto the cat?
No!
It's not the right target. Anything can happen. Finley's no good right now.
Is it a Huffer? No, it's a Leok.
But that's more damage.
Does the Wrath go in the... Oh my god!
Oh my gosh!
God.
He needs 1 point of damage to make this happen. I'm sorry, 2 points of damage. 2 points of damage will make this happen.
Oh my goodness.
He doesn't get there, and that's it.
Because dude has the Rock Fighter in hand. Dude has 10 damage plus 2 with the Hero Power. Oh my goodness.
What an insane game that we're seeing in game number 3 here. Dude manages to live through 2 Yogg-Sarons for 11 spells each and takes a 2-1 lead. And look at the stress on dude's face. Look at Topopablo. He's like smiling and having a good time. Dude looks stressed out right now.
Admirable, as if it couldn't get any better than Kabbalist Tome and Babbling Book for 2 Shatters and a Frost Nova. We just had 2 11 spell Yogg-Sarons, and dude still came out on top. That was insane.
Looking at the demeanors, you would think that dude lost this game. And the thing about it is, if you look back to preliminaries, dude's dreams were almost doused by a Yogg-Saron from Monsanto, a 5-spell Yogg-Saron that was an insurmountable lead afterwards. The fact that he just faded 2, oh my gosh.
And he is down 1 game right now. Do you think he can actually come back from this?
I mean, obviously he can. The shaman win here for dude, I think, was it's a significant win, but not quite as significant, I think, as say if dude picked up a win with either Druid or Warrior. You know, Druid is kind of, I'd say, the next soft spot in dude's lineup where the face-off is concerned with Topopablo. Topopablo has Druid, Shaman, and Hunter remaining. All 3 of those decks can perform versus Druid. You know, the Druid matchup, it's a toss-up of who basically comes on top of that one. I think dude has an edge with 2 Mulches in the build. But Hunter and Shaman are going to perform very well on average versus Druid. And so that's the matchup we're seeing to start here. And Topopablo's hand, it's lacking that early game, but he's got a lot of strong tools to get this going right now. Dude kept an Innervate in his opening hand, it looked like, and a copy of Swipe. He's not going to have any pressure for a little bit, but that's not really so important. He's trying to be the control deck for a while until he finds the right spot to turn the corner.
Yeah, I'm sure Dude's actually just very happy not to see something like an Argent Squire, a Fiery Bat on 1. When the Hunter is able to curve out starting from turn 1, they have very, very strong board presence. Pablo does pick up that huge Toad on 2. So mid-range Hunter has sort of been in a strange place lately where it's been, it's been a good deck. But in a lot of cases, it hasn't been considered good enough until you bring a 5-deck lineup to a tournament. So how do you think the Hunter is going to play out in Pablo's lineup?
Yeah, it's more of a hybrid version that he's brought here, and it's aptly named Pitbull. He named him after the animals that he has. And so he's got a copy of Argent Squire, 2 copies of Fiery Bat, 1 copy of Abusive Sergeant, and then kind of sort of the mid-cost minions you would expect here. Like Huge Toad, a copy of Direwolf Alpha in here, Kindly Grandmother, and then just kind of scales throughout the game. The thing that's really interesting to note is that there's 1 Eagle Horn Bow and 1 Argent Commander and 1 Deadly Shot. Everything else is kind of dedicated more towards those later game scenarios. And Barnes here, here's the thing, it's less likely to be good when you have a couple of the weaker minions in your deck, and he did draw Savannah Highmane this turn. So Savannah Highmane, an important draw, but getting Savannah Highmane from Barnes that's really like the super big,
the pinnacle.
Yeah, it's like it's the one giant power play that they can have from a random effect. And his hand is developing nicely afterwards, though. The fact that Unleash the Hounds isn't like too dead of a tool in this matchup because Dude's playing a more token version.
Yeah, Pablo's got some really nice turns coming up, but that Raven Idol draw for Dude was pretty important. It's going to make his Fandral turn. He's going to be able to utilize all of his mana instead of just playing the Drake. That is very interesting.
Sogoth is actually pretty good in this matchup. I mean, if you could manage to get that on board, Deadly Shot's really the only card that kills it. It's not getting kill commanded. It requires a lot of minion damage to push through, and with having 5 power on the front end, I mean, that's like a third Ancient of War for Dude.
That was a really nice Raven Idol. Usually the minions can be very hit or miss, and in this case, Sogoth the Slitherer, really, really nice, and that next swipe. So that's going to add some really much-needed removal to Dude's hand, and maybe even some staying power in the late game.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if Topo Pablo goes for the Abusive Sergeant here or the Hero Power. If you look at his next couple turns, Savannah Highmane's slated for the turn after. His turn 7, he could very well draw a minion or just anything to couple alongside the Eagle Horn Bow he already has, and he's rolling into Call of the Wild. I think his goal right now is just to create the strongest board state he possibly can.
Yeah, even though a lot of the times, if you do have 2 mana remaining, you want to sort of weave in those hero powers to try to extend your damage as much as possible. But in this case, the board state, if the Abusive Sergeant does remain on the board for next turn, represents 2 more damage. So it just has the potential to be even more effective. So, and I do believe Pablo credited his Hunter deck to Frozen. He said that he had been trying several different builds, and this was just the one that he liked best.
Yep.
So it is a little bit unique, but we're seeing it play out, and it's working really well.
Frozen, in a very similar lineup to what Topo Pablo has, did win a championship at PAX a couple weeks back with all the cards and Karazhan in the mix. And here, going to choose to ignore the Violet Teacher and just develop Savannah Highmane. And that's largely in part because of that Unleash the Hounds. And with the Direwolf Alpha even in there, it means that he could check a Power of the Wild turn here from Dude as well. And if Dude happens to go wide on board this turn, you could be seeing a disastrous turnaround for Dude in this matchup. I mean, kind of looking at the tools and the way they line up, you can see why the Hunter is considered favor in the Druid matchup.
Absolutely. And what are Dude's options this turn, really? You were saying he wants to avoid going wide because of the potential of Unleash the Hounds, but does he have a way to clear this board and put himself in a favorable position without doing so?
Yeah, it's what the Sogoth is for here, is to try to create this board state. But Savannah Highmane is so powerful versus minions just like this. The fact that you get to deliver a 6 damage blow and keep something around afterwards, keep 2 things around afterwards, it's the kind of situation that can spell trouble. And for Dude here, if he kills that Infested Wolf, he's beginning to make a little bit of progress, but then he's not being the aggressor. And Dude needs to find a way to turn the corner. And right now, it's just looking like that's not available.
How can he best put himself in a good position? He does have Azure Drake Swipe coming up. That spell damage swipe will be really, really nice in clearing off the hyenas as well as the death rattle from the Infested Wolf. But Pablo is in a dominant position once he clears off this Sogoth, which he can do really easily. Do you think this is already a pretty good Hound's turn?
I mean, I'm curious if he feels that way. I mean, he does have plenty of options for clearing off this Sogoth, and so just whichever one he thinks is going to be best here. You know, I'd say Unleash the Hounds is probably one of the weaker cards in his hand, so he may choose to use that simply for the ease of using it. But if he chooses to go with Eaglehorn Bow here, it probably means he's not using Unleash the Hounds. I mean, I would say Eaglehorn Bow is a pretty strong tool in his hand even. You know, Unleash the Hounds coupled with Direwolf Alpha here could get the job done, but he feels like it's just enough, that he can pay life right now. And I think Dude is pretty happy to see him pay life at this moment. And again, he's looking for an opportunity to turn the corner here.
Pablo can choose to clear off that Violet Teacher if he decides to play out the Argent Horse Rider and trade in the Infested Wolf as well.
I think it's giddy up. At this point, you know, he can push 5 damage, set Dude to 15, and roll into Call of the Wild with 4 minions already on board. 2 of them are tough to deal with. I think this is topopablo's turn to try to take advantage of that.
He certainly has a really nice board state, and that Eaglehorn Bow attached. Call of the Wild representing 5 damage from Huffer and an additional 4 from the minions being buffed that are already on the board. So Dude needs to do something. He does not have access to that Azure Drake swipe yet.
Could pick up an Innervate off Raven Idol. You know, he's surprisingly close to lethal here sometimes too. I mean, with a Savage Roar pickup, he's 3 damage off of lethal. And none of those are very good right now. Those are atrocious looking options for Dude.
Man. What can he do? Nourish is very slow, Force of Nature is ineffective, and Savagery doesn't do anything.
Not at the moment it doesn't. I think that's it. I mean, Dude, he may not die this next turn. He can still find a way, I think, to live through pressure, but it's kind of the nail in the coffin. Like, the pressure at that point will be almost insurmountable. He'd have to draw Innervate, and he'd have to have a favorable Yogg-Saron. I mean, I say that, I guess he does have swipe, but I've assumed he's using the swipe here is where my sentiment was going.
Yeah, that's really a shame because he did want to save it and get the most value with the Azure Drake spell damage, but
Savagery.
You know what? Hey, Savagery, definitely the best of the lesser of the evils in this case. He decides to, clear both off the board.
It's actually not that strong of a Call of the Wild turn either, if you really look at it. This is actually a good setup from Dude. I'm surprised he spotted something this strong with those options available.
You know what? That's why he's sitting in that chair, and it's he certainly earned it. And he's a very strong ladder player. And we did touch mostly on how his Freeze Mage skill is very high, but also just very well-rounded in every class.
It's got to be Call of the Wild turn. Trying to find any other way to not Call the Wild.
I could see Hound's Direwolf Alpha, but then you're
clear off the
just
Violet
really
Teacher.
expending so much damage into trading.
Let's clear off the Violet Teacher, I think, here and push for 5. I mean, he may still go face here. I mean, if
he could just push for 8.
Counting his damage is going to be paramount here. Like, how much can he squeeze out of the of this hand next turn? You know, 6 of the mana would be committed if he played Tracking Unleashed Hounds and Direwolf Alpha. It'd leave him 3 mana left over. So that's 1 hero power and a 1-cost card. Yeah, I think clearing off the Violet Teacher here is slated. Make Misha tough to deal with. You just saw a swipe. Force Dude to have something right here.
You have to take into account that Unleash the Hounds plus Direwolf does represent a fair amount of damage. So if Dude does go wider on board and doesn't have anything to taunt, then that could be the finishing blow that you need. But in this case, Call of the Wild is just
Dude used
so
1 swipe
good.
this turn. Dude used 1 swipe this game. So Azure Drake into swipe is probably his best chance to actually win.
No, he actually used the second one on Barnes on turn 4.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have that option available to him. If that's not an option, I'm curious how he gets out of this. Like, maybe Nourish into Wrath, clear off the Huffer with the tokens that you have remaining. But that's when the hero power starts to check things here.
Yeah. And Pablo's hand is weak going forward, but he doesn't really need any more of those cards.
His hand's kind of just strong enough. And that's not the situation you want to be in when your opponent's hand is weak, but it's still good enough. Now, so the swipe was from a Raven Idol.
He pulled it from the Raven Idol. So, that is what it was, yeah.
And what's funny is if he would have cast Azure Drake, he actually would have drawn this swipe. So the swipe here still lets him clear off the Huffer. So the percentage actually, I think, is in benefit of using the Nourish here instead. The trade-off is what kind of pressure he ends up getting here. And because he picked up the Living Roots and the Innervate, it means he gets the Arcane Giant as the pressure. So then, once again, Dude has found the absolute best scenario for him with the tools available. He's not going for the obvious decent play. He's looking deeper, and he's finding a great play to couple with it. How much damage is that? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage.
All right, so Pablo can track into potentially a kill command. Man, this is really just speaking volumes about the quality of the players we have. Dude taking his time every turn to find the absolute best possible play.
Kill command here wouldn't even be lethal. That's the thing. He doesn't have the mana to use everything. So this is actually like a tough spot for topopablo. I mean, he's at 10, and he's facing down 10 damage. Like, he has to kill something, and then he has to hope that there's no damage in topopablo's hand. And so, is Direwolf Alpha Houndmaster really as strong as this is going to get?
Oh my goodness, it looks like it's... he could play the Hounds and the Houndmaster, clear off the Apprentice, but that would only give him a 3/3. That would be dead to Wrath.
This is dangerous. I mean, there are some draws here for Dude that win the game.
Do you hero power and then just try to lethal next turn?
I think he's got a hero power. I think quick shotting this 1/1
gives away your win chance.
It doesn't give away your win chance, but it certainly cuts into it. I mean, this says isolate the Arcane Giant, so it cuts Wrath as a potential card for Dude, but then there's that Ancient of War pickup. Now, how on earth is topopablo getting through?
Now the Unleash the Hounds is just useless. And this is sort of what I was saying before. If he'd left up that Violet Teacher and Dude had gone wide on board again and didn't have a taunt, then that Hounds is much needed damage. But now the Hounds is just useless.
That Ancient of War was such a huge pickup. Like, that was a game-ending Ancient of War, and that's going to do it. The defense here is not available for topopablo. That Ancient of War pickup was huge, and Dude is now going to have a 3-1 lead, and he got the Druid win out of the way, which was the deck I feared for him. At this point, it is going to be so hard for topopablo to win this series. He dropped the Freeze Mage game early. He couldn't pick up a win with Hunter versus Druid.
Yeah, that just really, it's just unfortunate for Pablo. He had what should have been a favorable matchup with the Hunter versus the Druid, and unfortunately, even after a series of really nice draws in the early game, you know what, that third swipe from Dude, getting it off of the Fandral and the Raven Idol was so necessary. Actually, both the swipe and the Sogoth were really pivotal in this game.
I mean, it's a tremendous uphill battle. I mean, the Hunter is still favored versus the Dragon Warrior matchup, but his Druid and his Shaman are going to have a really tough fight ahead of him. You know, when you look at Dude's Dragon Warrior deck in particular, he's cut a lot of the top end out of this game, relying on Curator to kind of effectively be the more top end you need. I mean, he caps out at Curator, Grommash, and Ragnaros. He's not running the Onyxia. He doesn't have that Deathwing that's in the build. You know, he doesn't have those big draws that can be as much of a liability. And so as we get into game, Dude's also opened up with a pretty reasonable hand here. He's got Alexstrasza's Champion, he's got a Dragon to activate it, and he's got Frothing Berserker. And the Ragnaros, honestly, it being in his hand, it's not as bad of a tool versus Hunter as it is, you know, like some of the other late game tools available here. But topopablo going to open up with Fiery Bat, and if that Alexstrasza's Champion manages to live through this this Fiery Bat Death Rattle, that's a tough call.
Yeah, that could spell some serious trouble for Pablo. I mean, what do you think Dude's going to choose to do here? Does he go for the Alexstrasza's Champion and hope that it ends up living through the Death Rattle? If it does, that would allow it to kill off the second Fiery Bat as well, giving Dude some really tremendous value.
You can't just go face here as well. I mean, face is unreasonable, but when you look at topopablo's deck list in particular, you know, he's got to worry about quick shots, and then there's also an Abusive Sergeant and a Direwolf Alpha in the build that he'd have to worry about as well. It lives through the Death Rattle, and so that is 2 cards for 1 that Dude is getting from this Alexstrasza's Champion. That is exactly the situation he wants to find himself in.
Yeah, I mean, like you said before, the Hunter is in a favorable position against the Dragon Warrior, so you need to sort of you know, make up that disadvantage in various ways, and this is one of the ways to do it, getting a 2-for-1 very early on with the Alexstrasza's Champion, and now he's able to secure the board for himself.
It opens the way for that Fairy Dragon afterwards. Normally that card's actually pretty poor against Hunter. In Argent Horse Rider, I think a very needed draw if topopablo is going to stay in this game, but this is going to quickly turn into a problem with it. You know, Kill Command's not active, so it doesn't take out Frothing Berserker directly. He's got no 4-drop and no 5-drop in his hand at the moment. You know, where does he actually get to this Savannah Highmane in a favorable spot looking at this hand?
He's gonna need to draw definitely into some valuable 4-drops. Would be really nice for him. And Dude can sort of just play out the curve. He's got the Frothing Berserker on 3, Korkron on 4, Drake on 5. And you know what? That Ragnaros isn't looking too bad because it means that he does have something to roll into. He's going to be drawing mostly his earlier game cards because he doesn't have a lot of that late game. So by having that late game in hand, his draws are more likely to be playable. And now he secures that late game to play on curve.
And this is where topopablo's really got to worry about the rest of the hand. I mean, he can't identify much of the range from Dude at this point because there's been nothing that's been played that tells you any stories. I mean, the only thing he can think right now is that Fiery War Axe isn't in Dude's hand. He's going to build a little bit of board tension here and hopefully try to use Unleash the Hounds to try to get some of this back. There's a Grom drawn for Dude, and so his hand is lacking utility, but it's just very strong in general. And that, I think that's a more important thing for the Warrior to have in this spot. Like, would you rather have utility, or would you rather be able to just power out strong minions in this particular matchup?
You know what? I feel like a lot of the time, if you go for utility, you just fall behind against the Hunter. Even, the Fiery War Axe is so strong, and you definitely do want it in the early game, but a lot of the time, you just clear off minions, and the Hunter keeps pushing back on board, and then eventually you just don't have any more utility left. You don't have any strong minions on board, and then there's nothing that you can do. So, in this case, it's so hard to tell, especially because you're trying to make up for lost ground. You're already at a disadvantage. Unfortunately for Pablo, he does get the extra damage onto the Frothing Berserker this time, and he is able to remove it off the board.
Problem is the damage has all been cut into, and Houndmaster is about the weakest draw in the deck at the moment.
That's terrible.
I mean, he's staring down a 4-1. He doesn't have a way to take care of it other than use a kill command here.
Do you unleash the Hounds?
I mean, it's certainly a weak card in this matchup, but I mean, I think here's the deal. I think in some capacity he's got to kill this Quarterfinal lead. That will start adding up to way too much damage. And when you're slated for Savannah Highmane in the following turn, it means that guy's getting in 8 points of damage if you don't kill it right now.
Yeah.
Are either of these cards in your hand worth taking 8 points of damage?
I can't see that the Unleash the Hounds would be. You're at most going to be going up against, what, 3 minions on board against the Dragon Warrior, and in this case, the kill command just represents more damage.
I agree with that. I think Unleash the Hounds in this matchup is pretty poor overall when you consider that, Twilight Guardians exist in this deck, that Curator's part of the top end here, that most of the time they're playing one single big threat at a time.
Yeah, and Pablo's just going to need to play out the Savannah Highmane and rely on it, essentially. Dude doesn't have a super easy way to clear it off. He does have the Execute.
So
picks up the second one as well.
So Dude has entered phase 2 of the Hunter matchup, which is, can you deal with Savannah Highmane? This is like the second part of the raid boss where he's handled the early game. He's at a fairly decent position, but with the tools he has available right now, can he cleanly check this? If the answer is yes, then phase 3 is, does your opponent have Call of the Wild? That's really like the stages going on here, and that's not a Mage Hero Power. Mage Hero Power would have allowed him to execute this turn, but instead he's got Dagger Mastery, Lesser Heal, and Steady Shot. So is Dude the aggressor just yet? I don't think so. Lesser Heal's not providing him value, and unless he wants to sacrifice his Azure Drake to activate Execute, that just spells out the Lesser Heal here.
Wow.
So it's going to be a more slow approach here, the second Azure Drake. So he's building board tension, and he's trying to become the aggressor at this point. Is this enough to direct the attacks away? And when Eagle Horn Bow gets drawn, I don't think it is. I think we're going to start seeing the push here from topopablo.
Absolutely. I love that Pablo, again, like you said before, he's very good at identifying what his win condition is and going for it. He doesn't play around cards that he knows it's not worth it to play around. In this case, he had to rely on Savannah Highmane, and he's making it work. He put Dude down to 11 health.
Is this enough, though? I mean, Dude has a pretty fantastic reload to this. He's got Finley running into Savannah Highmane with Execute to back it up. He's got multiple options to handle the rest of the board state. Can he push enough damage or stabilize before topopablo makes that final push?
Well, Dude can, I imagine in this case you want to play the Kor'kron, clear off the Houndmaster. You can't take any more damage to face. And then you have to trade your Drakes into the Hyenas and simply heal your face back up to 13. You're playing very defensively, and that's a lot of the time not what the Dragon Warrior wants to do.
Yeah, I'm curious, looking at last turn, if topopablo is supposed to actually attack the Finley there instead of attacking the face. I mean, Dude would be at 14, but that Execute would have been much harder for Dude to activate. I think when he plays the Finley, it's a little bit obvious that he's fishing for a way to handle the Savannah Highmane with an activator and execute. I think that topopablo could have potentially read into that, attacked that Finley, and made it more awkward for Dude to answer. Instead, he's in this position, and I think it's going to be really tough for him to close this easily. I mean, he's got 5, 6, 7, 8. He's got 10 damage showing right now. Is this enough? That's enough. topopablo going to pick up a win with Hunter.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it potentially could have.
Oh, wait a minute. He cannot activate Quick Shot and Steady Shot this turn. So it's Huge Toad.
Kill command
Face, attack face, hero power. and then hope that's enough. And there's not really another source of healing in Dude's deck,
No.
so I think this should basically
This
close
should
it.
close it out. Yeah, a little bit preemptive from us just because he does not actually have 9 mana on this turn, but essentially this is the damage that he needed to close out the game, and Dude just doesn't have any other way to heal other than the lesser heal. So the 3 from Quick Shot and 2 from the Hero Power is going to be enough to close it out, and Pablo is going to take his second win in this match.
Yeah, I believe the maximum amount of damage that he could deal this turn was actually with the Ragnaros. It doesn't have inner rage in the build, so he couldn't activate Grom. And so even if Ragnaros went face in this situation, the damage wouldn't be there to close.
And obviously Dude's going to play it out. He's going to, you know, give his best options. Doesn't actually have a dragon in hand, so that Corruptor wouldn't be a great option anyway. But yeah, he has to know he's dead to 3, and he needs to heal, so you can't actually play the Rag and the Grom safely.
Yeah, so the question here is how you win. That's just what Dude's got to look at. Like, how does he deal the most damage here over a couple turns? And can he live through any extra source of damage from Topo Pablo's deck? I think a lot of what Dude's thinking about right now is where the huge toad actually lands. Like, if it lands on his face, he's dead to just hero power.
Yeah.
If he plays something like Grom. You know, he's dead to Quick Shot, he's dead to Kill Command, he's going to be dead to Unleash the Hounds. I feel like his best chance to win is actually Grom, attack the huge toad, push face for 8, and then hope that there's not the damage there to deliver. That's what he's going to conclude.
He sees it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a great spot from Dude here. The damage even goes to face, so.
All right, so Pablo not even needing that Quick Shot, but he does have the extra reach that he would have needed, and there's even more damage.
Embarrassment of riches at this point for Topo Pablo. 3-2 now, still in favor of Dude, but I'll tell you what, the stress is real for Dude at this point. I mean, we've seen him look uncomfortable almost the entire match. And Topo Pablo, he's gotten a little bit more serious towards the tail end, but when he lost that double Yogsron game, he was all smiles.
He was having fun. This Warrior deck is so consistent. How can Pablo possibly take advantage and try to swing the games into his favor?
Well, we saw the Dragon Warrior versus the Dragon Warrior versus Hunter matchup take place, and I mentioned kind of phase 2 with the Savannah High main. Can Dude get past that? Topo Pablo has gotten past phase 1 of the Dragon Warrior, which is picking up a win with the Hunter. Now he's on to phase 2, and phase 2 is incredibly difficult, which is Druid beating Dragon Warrior. Now, the Token Druid, I do think, has a little bit better matchup than sort of the Malagos versions do. Execute is really paramount in this matchup for Dude to handle threats that are at the right time. And Topo Pablo has the kind of hand that can get off to a blistering start here. He's got Innervate, he's got Violet Teacher, he's got Mire Keeper. He has to navigate this very well to find the board state that can check Dude's early game and then launch an assault afterwards. For all intents and purposes, Topo Pablo has to be the aggressor in this matchup, even though he also kind of has to be the control deck. He has to find that small window of opportunity to turn the corner.
And you know what? Pablo's been really good at doing that so far. He's been able to correctly identify where his win condition and where his win condition is when he needs to sort of play that aggressor or play that more control style. So if anybody's going to be able to do it, it's definitely Pablo. But Dude's hand is looking very, very strong right now.
I'm curious if he's going for the Mire Keeper or the Violet Teacher, if he's going to innervate. You know, getting the Violet Teacher online right now means that 2 hits of Fiery War Axe is going to kill it.
Yeah.
It means that you've checked Alexstrasza's Champion or Fairy Dragon preemptively. Mire Keeper is going to accelerate your mana curve a little bit to try to unlock some more options here.
All right, and Pablo is going to ramp up. He's going to have 3 mana available to him next turn, but this Mire Keeper is easily checked by the Fiery War Axe. And Dude does pick up a dragon, meaning that Alexstrasza's Champion is now live.
Yeah, this is looking like a great hand for Dude. And Mulch gets picked up. It's a key card, but it's a bit too early right now. That card is more reserved for like the like Gromish Hellscream, Ragnaros, you know, if a Draken Crusher gets active, those sorts of situations. And Topo Pablo here, he recognizes that even though Ravaging Ghoul is a strong play against him, he likely just can't wait that long. He's just going to try to get something on board and have anything to contest.
All right, so Dude staring down those 2 little saplings. Not too threatening, but certainly something you don't want to leave active just because of the potential to, you know, combine with something like Wrath and get the Fierce Monkey off board. So Dude is just going to play down that Fierce Monkey, and what would you do, Admirable? Would you swing into one of these saplings?
Absolutely not at this stage. I mean, if Dude finds himself in a position where topopablo is having to answer all of his minions, what that means is every single turn, Dude just plays another minion. That's what this deck is designed to do, is just play strong minions on curve. If topopablo is exhausting resources taking care of your stuff, that is right into where Dude's wheelhouse is right now. This Fierce Monkey is challenging every range of option that topopablo can have right now because of that Fiery War Axe.
And the Fierce Monkey is something that's sort of been a recent addition into the Dragon Warrior after Karazhan because of the Curator, which is also sort of finding its way into the Dragon Warrior decks. Really interesting. It draws you 1 Beast, 1 Dragon, and 1 Murloc. So with the addition of the Fierce Monkey in the deck, it is a beast. And that means you can, in the late game, refuel your hand with something like Finley, the Fierce Monkey, and then, you know, any of the plenty of dragons you do have in the deck.
Right.
So that's sort of given the Dragon Warrior some more staying power in the meta and a bit of a new identity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a staple. It definitely is. I mean, can you imagine not playing that card in Dragon Warrior?
It just seems too good.
It's way too good.
It just seems too
It's
good.
got taunt for some reason.
And it's something, the Curator, I feel like, is something that people just sort of laughed off initially. They're like, oh, a dragon, a Murloc, and a beast. When are those ever going to be in the same deck? Well, people are finding ways to do it, and it's really, really good. It's been compared to Ancient of Lore, actually, as just strictly better if you are able to draw all 3 cards, and it's got taunt.
Wow, Dude's hand is so good right now. I mean, obviously the Violet Teacher is slated for a kill here. Question is, what do you do it with? And I'm thinking that the Frothing Berserker is looking massive at this point. And it looks like he's going to deviate a bit, though. So this tells me he wants to get another minion online, which is really interesting to me. So Alex Rose Champion Fire War Axe is going to answer this. He wants that taunt to stay in place. He's protecting the Fairy Dragon. So that makes sense to do it this way. I'm guessing that there's a chance he attacks this 1/1 token to avoid Wrath and Hero Power being an effect.
Yeah.
Wild Growth. Not the draw right now.
All right, so Pablo needs something off of Raven Idol. What is good here?
None of
Not
those.
those cards.
Wow, that is bad.
That's very unfortunate. Something like a Wrath would have been very nice.
He honestly needed something like, I don't even know if
Swipe would have been good.
I'm curious if spell is even good here, because what I'm looking at with this is I'm trying to actually think of a spell you would want to get in this position.
I think a 4-drop minion might have just been better.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, this is, I think, one of the rare situations where you can go for minion. And if you take into account the fact that you're going to discover Druid cards more often than you discover neutral cards, it means that Fandrel's a potential to grab. It means that you could grab Mounted Raptor sometimes here. It means that you could get a Keeper of the Grove, which, while Keeper of the Grove isn't like super strong on this board, could potentially kill both
Challenges
minions.
the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like, especially with Raven Idol, just because, 99% of the time the spell is going to be more valuable, that a lot of the time people just auto-pick that spell. But there are these rare occasions when potentially the minion could just put you ahead.
Yeah, and sometimes, typically in these spots, Azure Drake is kind of like the weaker 5-drop that this deck has. When you're ahead, though, Azure Drake is massive onto this board state. I mean, topopablo has no answers for what's going on. Just relegated to Arcane Giant. It's still a strong play, but it doesn't feel very good. And
Dude had an execute right now.
My God, that's good enough. That Blackwing Corruptor is a massive draw for Dude right now.
Oh my goodness, Pablo just not finding any help
Doesn't have to do
whatsoever.
Yeah, just both Frothing Berserkers. Like, it's clear that topopablo cannot answer your board state. That's the time to push. When your opponent has that weak turn of development, that's when you go for the throw.
Oh man, how does Pablo come back from this? Dude is looking to close out this game on the next turn, and Pablo needs to nourish for some draw, and he's got to find a miracle at this point.
Well, ooh.
Can he survive?
So Wrath. Oh, he could definitely survive this turn.
He's got the Mark of the Wild.
I don't know. If he uses Innervate to cast Mark of the Wild here, it means that Yogg-Saron is going to be delayed by a turn. And Yogg-Saron, I think right now, is clearly where topopablo's win condition is. So my question is, how does he actually sequence this where he gets out of this situation okay? And it might be something like Innervate Mulch, actually, because the Frothing Berserkers have just turned into such a massive threat at this point. One Frothing Berserker is going to be 5 power. You're going to have a 5 health Arcane Giant, and you're only at 16 right now. If he Innervates Mulch, delays the Yogg-Saron. If he doesn't mulch, is he taking too much damage? I mean, if he attacks the Frothing Berserker here and runs into Ravaging Ghoul, that's basically it.
So can Pablo live for 2 more turns if he chooses to Innervate Mulch remove both of the Frothing Berserkers. Oh man, it's. I think this is the only way that you can potentially win. He's got to live for one more turn though.
Yep, so there's the mulch. And I mean, it is awfully close. If he lives for another turn, I'd be a little bit like if he can get to 10 mana, I'd be a little bit surprised. Dude's hand is just so strong at the moment. Blackwing Corruptor with a dragon in hand, Fiery War Axe available.
If Dude even wants to remove that Arcane Giant, he can just Blood to Ichor and then Blackwing Corruptor and remove it because of the spell damage from the Azure Drake. And then he gets the 5/4 minion plus the 2/2 Slime token.
That should be enough, I believe. He pushes 7, so topopablo is going down to 9.
Pablo does have the Mark of the Wild. He can make a taunt minion. But what can he draw?
What taunt minion
is the question.
This? 9. So he's got to pull. He's got. Oh, wow.
Okay, so he can swipe honestly, Power of the Wild and Mark of the Wild.
That's a good draw here too. Yeah, because he gets the extra spells loaded on this as well. I mean, that's something else he really needed here too. Is the Yogg needs to be just bigger. He's got to go for it.
All right, so 5/4 taunt.
I think Dude can sniff this out here too. It's like he knows that Yogg-Saron's coming. Draws in his deck that kill him. Ragnaros is going to kill him. Quarterfinal's going to kill him.
Alex draws his champion.
Blackwing Corruptor, is that enough? Blackwing Corruptor.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That is enough. That is going to be more than enough. And dude7597 looking noticeably relieved as he takes a win in the first match of the day over topopablo.
Yep, and he looks so much more composed in this game number 7. Or I'm sorry, in this game number 6 as well. I mean, that's something really big to note, is all of his competitive experience in the past, I think, really shining through in this 6th and final game. You know, a very strong hand obviously will get you a little bit more relaxed, but just having the experience of competing and being able to think through everything despite the stress of the situation, just fantastic win for Dude.
Absolutely, and you know, in some of Dude's interviews, we saw that he does have a pretty steely mindset. He plays Ultimate Frisbee. He's used to competition. Certainly a fantastic ladder player. So I'm willing to bet that confidence and that cool composure really helped him out today. But we're gonna throw it over to Fireside, where TJ has an interview with our winner.
That's right, guys. I'm joined here by Dude, the winner of the first match of the day. First of all, Dude, you looked really nervous going into that. Talk to me about your mindset going into the match and how you feel now that you've won.
Well, I was really nervous when I was playing Hearthstone with Admirable yesterday. He was telling me like he was really impressed by topopablo and how he thinks about the game. So I knew he was a formidable opponent.
And now that you've won, how do you feel?
I feel really relieved.
Well, I did pick you as my prediction to win the whole thing, so are you going to take it all the way?
I'll do my best.